Hello, I'm Keith Spera from NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. Welcome to Let's Talk. My guest today is at the vanguard of the New Orleans burlesque revival. As an entrepreneur, she has built a cottage industry around the art of the tease that includes burlesque classes, erotic-themed cruises, and her own boutique in the French Quarter. As a performer, she fronts various shows of her own creation and has been featured at everything from the annual carnival season greasing of the poles to Judith Owen's Christmas Without Tears variety show. Here to talk about all that is Trixie Minx. Trixie, thank you for being here.
Thank you, and especially for that really nice introduction. I was flattered. I didn't even know I did all that stuff.
Look at you, you're so impressive.
I'm impressed with myself.
You're impressed with yourself. So let's start with a philosophical question here.
Okay.
A lot of women for, say, Halloween or Mardi Gras will dress as a sexy version of work. There'll be a sexy nurse or a sexy librarian. Mm-hmm. Your work clothes are sexy to start with. So for Halloween and Mardi Gras, do you just go as a regular nurse or a regular librarian, or what do you do?
Well, typically for Mardi Gras, I always go as a pregnant woman because whatever the costume is, I like to wear a pregnant belly. Mm-hmm. I find people are kinder to you, and right. And it's just it started as a joke one year, and then that's sort of my thing. Whatever costume I wear, I'm typically pregnant.
So instead of adding sexy to the costume, you add pregnant.
Pregnant,
yes, blah blah blah.
I do. I think it's it's very feminine. Obviously, yes. It's a different level of sensuality, I guess you could say. But for Halloween, this is so silly. Most recently, I was what I call a trash panda. I was a raccoon. I like to go more ridiculous.
A raccoon?
Yes, a raccoon.
Why? Why a raccoon?
Because in real life, I feel like that's sort of my spirit animal. I wash my hands a lot. I'm always foraging for food. I can't cook, so I'm starving all the time. So if you happen to have any other chefs on the show, just let me know. I'm starving.
I will see what I can do. Oh my gosh. All right, so another philosophical question.
Okay.
Explain for the folks that may not know what you do as a burlesque artist, how that varies from, say, clubs on Bourbon Street. Talk about the art of what you do and how that kind of differs from, like I said, a club on Bourbon Street. Yeah,
the really cool thing about burlesque is that it's part of a bigger spectrum. Mm-hmm. So burlesque is the art of tease, and if you actually go back to the root of the word, it comes from the Latin burla, which means to joke, to poke fun at. So it originally started as sort of political humor and society, poking fun at that. However, where it's transitioned and where I think most people are familiar with its popularity is sort of rooted here in New Orleans. And that was in the 1950s and 60s, which was a golden era of burlesque. That's where there was the combination of the jazz musicians and the dancers. And that's when you see the glamorous gowns and the gloves. And I think the appeal was it was fantasy, glamour, striptease, but done in a situation that was more entertaining, celebratory, you would bring a date. It wasn't something that a single person could go, obviously, but it was more let's go out to see a show.
Right, it wasn't for bachelor parties necessarily. It was a classy evening out, basically.
Yeah, it was an elegant evening out. You were out, you see and be seen, all that stuff. And there were hosts, and there were elaborate props and themes and all sorts of fun things. However, the funny thing is that burlesque always, what we do have today in the strip clubs on Bourbon Street is you have sort of, the performers are literally going there, and there's not as much strip tease as much as performing. Mm. And I think the difference sort of, it's one of those things that's so clear to see, and it's a lot harder to explain, and I don't want to do disservice to any of the performers either way. But I find that, and there is a lot of crossover, which is bizarre and wonderful in the best way possible. But I think when you are at a club, the focus is more transactional. They are performing to try and do an exchange for a financial exchange. Mm-hmm. Whereas in burlesque, the financial exchange is upfront with a ticketed sale. And of course, you are more than welcome to tip tip. We encourage everybody to tip, and that goes all around the board, whether you're a burlesque dancer, a server, a bartender, musician, tip everybody, tip often.
Journalists don't typically get tipped, unfortunately.
You know what? This could be your opportunity.
I think there's some ethical lines there in journalism. You don't accept money.
Oh, I guess you're right with that.
Yes, a little different. Yes.
We're learning a lot about philosophy and ethics here today.
Yes, we are.
All before coffee. I got to start drinking more. But yeah, no, for me, I think burlesque really is about the art of the tease, and it's one of these things that continues to evolve with time, with society, which is good and important. And now we have things, burlesque has gone from that golden era I spoke of to more contemporary neo-burlesque, where you have all different genres. Like there's nerdlesque that focuses on it's like comic book inspired characters, or like, you know, you might be familiar with TV shows or whatever, and it's like they'll use characters from that. There's one of my favorite things that has gotten more recognition is boylesque. So people of all genders can perform. It's very exciting. And it's more, I feel like it's pulling more towards inclusivity and creativity and less about just the gown and glove, though that's still the foundational, cornerstone of where we started.
The tools of the trade.
Yeah.
The gloves coming off in the gown, right? That's,
yeah.
I would be, you say it's open to all genders, I would be the least successful burlesque artist probably, because A, I'm not very coordinated, and just, I'm not very smooth at all. It's
absolutely not true. You clearly have I'm gonna look at the camera number one. You clearly have an audience.
Yeah, with my clothes on, yes, I do. I have an audience with clothes on, so.
But that's part of the fun, you know, there's burlesque dancers, the name is, it's leaving me at the moment, but you got to have a gimmick. There was a burlesque dancer that was incredibly famous for just not taking it off. That was the whole point, was it was the tease of you never got to actually see what was happening. Gypsy Rosalie. Yeah.
See, it wouldn't work for me to be famous for not writing an article. I actually have to write the article.
But that's what I'm saying, is you could write the article without ever taking off a garment, or that could be the hook, is that you only took it off when somebody finished reading the article. Just one sock.
See, this is why you're an entrepreneur, because you know how to make these ideas that make sense.
Well, I mean, I would hope after the amount of time I've been in this field, I should come up with something.
Well, let's talk about that. So it was not always your dream to disrobe for a living. That was not how you started off as a little girl. You grew up in Miami.
Yes.
And you wanted to be a ballet dancer, and were for a while, correct?
So, I mean, I grew up in Miami, fell in love with dance from as young as I can remember. I just remember I loved dancing. Ballet was my passion, my dance technique of choice. Loved it, got into it, and I broke my ankle. It was also, I had a very unhealthy relationship with my body in that time. And actually, you know, I'm fine talking about it right now. I had an eating disorder. It was awful. And I don't blame anybody. It's just, you know, something that happened. But that's where finding burlesque and finding New Orleans. I came to New Orleans to visit a friend. I thought ballet was over for me. I went back to school. I was working as a Pilates instructor, and I was trying to get back into dance. And I had started dancing with this ethnic folk dance ensemble, and one of the women in that ensemble was a burlesque dancer, and she was like, "You really got to try this." I was like, "Oh no, not me! I can't do this. You crazy?" And she's like, "No, yeah, you should do it." And it was funny because there were other people from other aspects of my life. There was somebody that you know, a friend of mine was going to school with that was also a burlesque dancer that was like, "Oh yeah, you should totally try this." I was in an opera as a backup dancer, and there was one of the singers that was doing burlesque, and she was like, "Oh yeah, no, you should try it." And all these people sort of were like, "Try it." And I was like, "You know what? Let's check it out." So I did, and I hated it. I saw it, I was like, "This is awful. This is awful." Because you got to keep in mind, I came from this ballet background where we had orchestras and rehearsals and theaters, and what I saw was sort of, in hindsight, it was sort of the embers of the starting of the neo-burlesque movement, because I came onto the scene right as the Shim Shamettes had sort of faded.
Shim Shamettes, who performed at the Shim Sham Club in the French Quarter.
Which, they were revolutionary. They I don't think people recognize how important New Orleans is for the burlesque, the history of burlesque worldwide. It truly is an epicenter. It's amazing. And it was one of these things where I missed that. So I was seeing these other shows, and they were great. They were good, but I always wanted bigger or more, or I don't know, just something more. And
a bigger show, a bigger production, you mean?
Yeah,
more elaborate.
And I mean that every step of the way, whether it's with a bigger, I love more is more. Like I love a larger cast if I can do it. You know, obviously I've learned about budgets and stuff like that. And, you know, admittedly you have to edit where you can, but just even costuming and creativity and any of that. But essentially I auditioned for a show, I got in, I was really excited, and then Katrina hit. And I evacuated with a backpack that had like my journals, my photos, and a pair of tassels.
A pair of tassels.
Because they had given it to me. I still never performed. And I was like, oh. So I remember being in a hotel room in Mississippi being like, well, I guess we should figure these out. And that was was the catalyst for me starting burlesque, because I had all these people that were so supportive. And I'd gone as far as auditioning, and I was so nervous, and sort of that moment of Katrina was like, nothing is guaranteed in life, and it was really a defining moment for me. So I just came back and I said, let's go all in. And then now look at me.
Look at you now.
This is ridiculous.
I did not expect the twist in the story to involve tassel testing in a Mississippi hotel room during Katrina.
Nor did I.
So where was the first place that you performed then?
Okay, so my first burlesque performance was at Tipitina's in the Quarter. I'm not sure if you remember, they used to have a Quarter location.
Right on Decatur there, I think, right? Or North Peters, whatever that, right at the front of the Quarter.
I think it's a Coyote Ugly now, or it's the escape rooms. It's one of those things. And it was great because it was with a live band. It was a traditional classic burlesque show, and we performed every Friday. So I already had all this dance training, but for burlesque, it helps to know the technique, but you really do learn it on stage, because it's an ephemeral art, and it's not. I think that's one of the things that people don't recognize with burlesque, is that while it may be one performer, it's not. It's more than that. The show, it's interactive. You have to have the audience.
You feed off the energy.
Exactly, and vice versa.
Yeah. And
the same thing is like you need a good lighting person, you need good musicians, you need, like, if you're not doing your own costumes, you need a good costumer, choreography too, all that stuff. Like, more is more. More is more.
Well, and so that was a performance you said you didn't enjoy, that first one at Tipitina's. It was uncomfortable, or it was just
okay, so I was working for a producer that had a different vision of burlesque than what I did. They wanted it to be classic 1950s, 60s, boom. So I was assigned a role. I had a costume approved. I had one song, and I did the same song and the same dance for like months. And I just was going insane. Yeah. Because I was like, but we could do this, and what if we did this? And I was like, what if we made it funny? Like, what if we made it really silly? Like, wouldn't that be great? And it was one of these things that's sort of what opened my eyes, is because you also have to keep in mind is that, you know, I'm actually 300 years old, so this was before the internet, so there wasn't much ways to research.
For a second, I thought you were saying that you had a previous life, but no, you're making an age joke. Yes. Well, if you're 300, I'm 5.
I know, it's so great to be a part of the New Orleans history.
Yes. It is, yes.
No, I joke, but like now you just type anything in, and we're so lucky. Like, you can have all these videos come up, but there was this video called Something Weird Videos, and I remember having it on VHS, and it like had clips from old 1950s and 60s stuff, and I remember just like digging online, and like MySpace had just started, and I was just like, what can I get my hands on and find?
Just researching old burlesque acts and routines, you mean?
Anything. Yeah. Like, it's so funny. There's actually a burlesque performer I've had the pleasure of working with now, but I remember finding her. Her name's Miss Indigo Blue. She was one of the winners of Miss Exotic World, and she had a studio where she actually taught burlesque in Seattle, and she made these twirly girl tassels. Like, she made tassels that were innovative because they were on a spinner, like a fishing lure spinner. And I was just like, if I'm gonna be the best of the best, I need those. Like, I'm gonna do this. And just like, you know, I was doing my best to try and figure out what burlesque was. And what I learned in this sort of like deep dive of research was that it's an amazing art form that continues to evolve, and it is what you make it.
Right. Right.
And that's when I was like, you know what? I'm not really happy doing this. I think I should quit. And a friend was like, or start your own. And I was like, huh.
And so that's what inspired you to put your own show together then?
Yeah.
Okay, which has been going on now for, I mean, how long have you had your own group?
That was not 300 years. Actually, I think I get so confused because the pandemic sort of put a pause on everything, but I think 16 or 17 years now.
Okay. And so you have a troupe of dancers.
Yeah.
So do they audition for you? How do you select the dancers that are part of your show?
It sort of has, we need to do auditions. That's the thing, is none of this, I never had a business plan. It was never, it's like when I remember the day that as Trixie, I had to file taxes. I was like, oh no, I wasn't. I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. And I wasn't prepared. Like I didn't know about all that stuff. I had to like learn on the go. But yeah, no, it's fun thinking back about it. It was all just sincere, but at the time there were 2 other shows running, and one was very classic and very like formal. And then there was one that was very, there was a group called the Suicide Girls that was sort of this like online neo-burlesque movement.
Edgy with a lot of tattoos on the girls. And kind of a,
And the funny thing was, is I didn't fit into either genre, but I got to meet amazing women in both. And that's sort of how my first group, Fleur de Tease, started. And that started as an actual troupe in a group because, again, from my ballet training, we always did rehearsals, and I wanted to build something that had like themes and that we did group numbers and just something that was a little bit more cohesive than here's a dancer, here's a dancer, here's a dancer, which again, there's nothing wrong with that. I run shows like that as well. It's a more variety show format, but I just really wanted something like that popped.
Right, a production.
Yes,
something with production values and what have you, and a storyline and all that sort of stuff, I guess.
And that's pretty much how it started. It was like out of the people I knew that were performing, I reached out to people and was like, hey, would you want to do this? And like, it's a little different. I remember one of our first rehearsals, one of the dancers showed up with a beer, and I was just like, okay, so we're not going to do that moving forward.
With a beer. So like, no, a little more professional. We want to be, yes.
And she was like, this isn't how things are done. And I was like, I understand that, but I have an idea. And I think if like we do a rehearsal with some dancing, it's going to work out really well.
And it did.
It was innovative at the time.
An event like the greasing of the poles, Royal Sonesta on Bourbon Street, they do it every year, every Friday before Mardi Gras. The concept is that they're making the poles not hospitable to climbers, but it's become this event, and it is very much an event that, like burlesque, is all about the tease, because there are things that are implied, and you know, and you can kind of run with it and make it as elaborate as you want.
This whole time I thought it was about construction.
Trixie, I have some news for you.
I am learning so much on this show.
But no, that is the sort of event that you can really play up as much as you want and have a good time with.
Exactly. And I think that was really, so I also host a show at the Royal Sonesta, which I'm very proud of. And to me, it's a throwback show because we have a live band, we have dancers, and again, that's gown and glove. And I think that's amazing that the street where burlesque was able to grow. And really just be like world famous. We have a show on Bourbon Street every Friday where you can actually see the way it was, but we change it up so it's a little bit more interactive. But the reason why I bring that up is that I think that's part of why I was invited initially, and then they just kept bringing me back because they were like, this is fun. Because I remember, again, like with grease, I took it very seriously. I think I put on, rubber gloves, and I was like, I want to get this as greasy as possible. I was thinking more sort of logistical, less sensual.
Right.
But again, there's humor in that. There's entertainment in that. But I think what people like is for a moment, for a day, whoever they are, they get to be glamorous or sexy, sensual. I'm trying to, we talked about this earlier. I'm not sure if we're allowed to say this. I have a potty mouth, so I'm trying to be very calm and not say any bad words in my excitement.
Great job, yes.
But yeah, no, I think I love being a part of that event because, and what I really love is that they bring in so many people. They started bringing in, they have like you can vote for somebody to be like, just doesn't matter who you are, as long as you're a New Orleanian with a lot of heart and, you know, are willing to sign a waiver.
Heck of a waiver, I imagine, yeah.
It's surprisingly not that long.
All right. Well, yeah, and you talk about, it's on the heart of Bourbon Street, but you also go up, do a show in New Jersey.
Yeah, in Atlantic City.
You've been doing it for years, every summer?
Yeah, I'm very fortunate to be a cast member of the Burlesque show, which is a sort of old school classic vaudeville style show in Atlantic City. And I'm really proud of it. We've been doing it for 10 years. The cast is great. And the funny thing is it's like everything I've wanted to do here, but because it's a casino, it has a bigger budget, and there I get to just be a performer rather than trying to wear all the hats. And it's a beautiful thing to be a part of. I'm so excited that they have that, because I think, you know, in today, everything's like what can be done cheapest, fastest, how can we get the most people in, make the most money?
Right.
And that's not what this is about. This is like, how can we do the biggest and like the most ridiculous and glamorous, and
that's awesome.
Let's add more people because more is more. And clearly I love that.
One of the places I did not expect to see you was part of the Judith Owen Christmas Without Tears show.
Why not?
I don't know. I just didn't expect it. But lo and behold, last year's show you did Hot Jewish Chicks, I think. Was that the song?
Yes. So it's also very hard to stay still, especially when we're talking about, I keep wanting to be like, and I'm trying to like stay in frame. So I'm like, I'm gonna send my hands.
You're doing great.
Thank you.
Hot Jewish Chicks. That's one of your theme songs, one of your big songs.
So it's funny, we joke about this, but everybody sort of has like a trademark song or a trademark dance routine. Like Dita Von Teese is the martini glass. Mm-hmm. Everybody recognizes her for that. And for me, in a very odd way, it's a giant spinning dreidel that I have. And it was something that I created in my first year, and I've, you know, thankfully evolved the act. So there's a better costume now. I'm on my like 5th dreidel. It's
You've worn out 4 previous dreidels.
Yeah, one got lost. I don't even know where it was.
That's a heck of a souvenir sitting on somebody's bookshelf right now.
Yeah, I wonder. It was one of these things I was doing at a gig and then had another gig, and they were like, don't worry, we'll hold on to it. And then it was never to be found again.
The giant, which is hard to sneak out of a place with. I mean, because your dreidel, the one I saw is huge.
Yeah, you can't fit it into a regular car. Like you need like an SUV. It's a big deal. But no, I think it's funny the way it worked out. But I love Judith. Obviously she's an incredible human being, and I love how she brings in people from all different walks of life and all different fields, you know, of the arts. And when she invited me, I was so excited. And then when she said, "Can you do this?" I was giggling to myself. "Are you sure?" I mean, I think I asked her twice. I was like, "This one though," like the dreidel.
Yes. And she said, "Yes, go for it."
Yeah, and I was like, "All right, let's do it." So I felt very privileged to be on a stage with phenomenal artists like Brian Batt and Kermit Ruffins and me with a giant dreidel topless. It's just, my mom is so proud.
So proud.
And they really are.
Well, so you joke about it.
I joke about it, but it's true.
I've met your father. He's been in the entertainment business.
I know he's going to be so excited when I tell him we did this.
Yes.
He's always asking about you, by the way.
Oh, that's very kind. But no, they are proud of you because you've built this thing, and you've built a little cottage industry as the face of burlesque in New Orleans, which is something pretty cool.
Well, and I think that's part of it too, because initially part of the thing I didn't like about burlesque is I thought it was just like sexy, like all sexy and all this one way. And I think it's sort of the way people, I say this, it applies the same to jazz. Like some people will hear, you know, elevator music and be like, "Oh, this is jazz, I hate jazz." I'm like, you hate elevator music jazz. You haven't heard like traditional New Orleans jazz, or there's all these different genres that you can like listen to. And that's how I feel about burlesque. There, a lot of people are like, it's in a corset and it's thigh highs. I'm like, yes, but there's all these other things you can do with it. And I love that. It makes it more accessible. And I don't know if it's necessarily family friendly, but it's like, it doesn't have to be like, that's my sexy, sultry look.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be just like, I am looking to seduce you. Obviously, that's a part of it, and that can be it. But there's a lot of like joy and comedy and just entertainment for entertainment's sake, or spectacle.
Or playful. I mean, it can be playful, or and without being, like you said, overtly sexual, I guess.
And on the same way, it can go the opposite extreme, where I've seen burlesque numbers where there's not one garment of clothing on, and the tease is in the fans or whatever. And that's the beauty. And I keep going back to that, is that there's so many different options with it. But my parents are very proud. They've seen shows, and it's one of these things I'm like, are you sure? Every time I'm like, are you sure? And it's nice to have that support from my family and my friends. And I think it just goes to show everybody wants their kids to be happy.
That's right. That's right. We've only got about 90 seconds left here.
Oh no, I talk so much.
No, it's great. But I would say, this, like playing for the Saints, this is probably not something you can do forever. Do you think about that? And is that why you've expanded into having a store and all these other things?
No,
so you can
my retirement plan, I'm going to go back to camera one for this. I'm going to be Ruthie the Duck Lady. I'm going to be the crazy lady running through the corridor. I'm going to carry a scrapbook, and I'm going to go with my scrapbook talking crazy, and y'all better give me at least $1, or I don't know how, inflation's going to work. But that is how I plan to live out my life. I plan to be the crazy swamp lady.
Well, there you have it.
But until then, yes, no, I've also branched out into a bunch of other things. I have done, we opened a boutique, which I'm very proud of, that sells products made by our performers. We have classes. And one day I would love to actually even have a historical element, like a museum element in that store. But we do events and private event work. So even if I'm not the one that's able to perform as a dancer, I can still create. And strangely enough, I've transitioned into hosting. So I do a lot of, I call it FemC work now. So
FemC,
yes.
As opposed to MC, yes.
Yes, and it's so funny because I'm trying so hard to transition that way. Everybody's like, take your pants off. And I'm like, excuse me.
No.
Sure, but I'm trying to just expand my portfolio. I'm trying to expand my skill set.
Just talk and be charming with clothes on. Yes, it can be, yes.
It can be done both ways, admittedly.
We just did it here for the last 30 minutes.
I know.
So I
love that for us.
This has been great, Trixie. I really enjoyed this.
I love this too.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, and good luck with all of your endeavors, including FemCing.
Thank you. And thank you again so much for having me on the show.
My pleasure. All right, thank you guys for watching. I'm Keith Spera. This has been Let's Talk. We'll see you next week.